platform to achieve their own career objectives, to achieve their ambition, to achieve their own vision. So it is not so much about taking a walk and you follow the leader. So they are also looking for platforms to achieve their own objectives. So in terms of leadership, the leadership model of a social organization, which is an organization that employees and people working there are very, very critical in driving the success. They are stakeholders. So you're an orchestrator. You must be inclusive and co-creative, distributed and non-hierarchical. Most of us can relate to this now, wherein people are calling people by first name. If you notice, according to perhaps if going by his hierarchy, the hierarchy of order, a few years ago, I may not be able to call him today, but I'm doing that without feeling guilty. You know, some people will say that, did you call him today? Do you realize that his name is Mr. Ojo? Well, that is still okay, but I just want to encourage us to understand that you're going to have a lot of centennials calling the CEO by his first name, not because it's a sign of disrespect, but because the modern workplace has become a lot more social. People are more likely to interact, and the only way to break the screen is to call you by your names. Now, in terms of staffing, many years ago, people will ask you, what are you studying? I'm not sure so much attention is being paid to what you're studying anymore. It's about how much skill, what skills have you acquired. So you see people from various specialties, various vocations, acquiring hands-on skills in other areas after studying 4 or 5 years in university. And it's going to continue. In fact, there are cases where people have acquired skills after working in that space. For instance, somebody studied, perhaps he has been, he may have studied finance. After doing finance for 10 years, he says he's not doing finance again, wants to go and do IT, and he starts afresh. So this is kind of mobility you see in the workplace. It's a talent-driven environment. It is no more based on specialism. Specialization is still there, but what counts more is the outcome and output you bring to the table. In terms of communication, of course, we know communication is one of the most disrupted areas. The way we speak, the language we use has radically changed. It is top down before, or for some people, it's still the same now. Formal and corporate tone, fragmented. So the same essence derived from the leadership structure, wherein the employees are meant to be passive. They are passive consumers of the message from the chief priest, which is the leader, the head of department, the CEO, and all of that. But again, all of that have changed. Like I said, leadership has become conversational, social. You negotiate. You must be inclusive. You must also understand the language of digital communication, because those channels are there to be used, and they travel like the speed of light. So people need to understand that you cannot thrive in a modern social organization if you don't understand that the mode of communication has changed. No matter how well you have succeeded in the past, what probably made you successful a couple of years ago might not work in the future. Now, the strategy formulation process, which is the key area, I think most people should be very interested in. Strategy formulation, the goal setting, the budgeting, and the focus are done in the boardroom. A group of wise men sit together and come up with ideas, because obviously they know the history of the company more than others. So they feel that just think that people don't understand. So the project model is conceive the idea and sell it to the employees. Now you're not going to have that kind of thing happening, because even when it is not said, the body language suggests the fact that you must be able to co-create. You must seek a bottom-up approach to the way you engage employees. You must seek their input, and most times when you seek their input, you must also mean it, because age is no more a definition of wisdom. Just quickly run to other areas. Let me not dwell so much on this. Okay, what the next thing you can see in my slide? Sorry. Okay, I just put a post. I said, did you notice 20 years ago, banking, law, and medicine were the fastest growing corporate vertical? Today, jobs in technology, telecommunications, and media have completely eclipsed. So what I'm just saying is what has happened in the last 20, 15 years are far more fundamental and disruptive than even what has happened 100 years before now. 20 years ago, the average age distribution of new entrants in the workplace were between age 28 to 35. The average trainee is below. You have some CEOs at 40 trying to retire. I mean, even in this country, we have a few of them. it's no more a joke. People start their career at the age of 22, sometimes 20, and by the time they are already 20, 30, they have done 10 years or 8 years. And when you engage them in the workplace, you're looking at them from the perspective of age and wisdom. They're looking at you from the point of skills and talent. So these are some of the things you may also need to notice. And why it is important for you to notice is that when you become self-aware, it becomes easier for us to know how to deal with some of these issues. 20 years ago, communication and writing skills were the basic skills in the workplace. Today, proficiency in Microsoft Office, being tech savvy, and the ability to work with a team are leading purposes for any role. Now, I also needed to draw your attention to this. Most of you already are conversant with this, just to give you a background to the personalities, the workplace, and the workforce, as they say. So you could see that the Generation X, which to a large extent still hold the X in terms of leadership in the most workplaces, especially in the emerging markets, between the age of 42 to 57. They are missionary workers, self-motivated, results-oriented, hardworking, with a tendency to be quiet achievers. I'm sure most of you can relate it either to your parents or even us. That is the attitude, the background of training that informed the kind of behavior you see in the workplace. Now, you also have the millennials. The millennials are between the age of 26 and 41. They value meaningful motivation, challenge the hierarchy or status quo. They place importance on tasks rather than time. Millennials are technology savvy and they stay connected. The millennials are the ones who will tell you that you're a fantastic boss and still they'll give you a thank you letter and resign the next day, and they don't see anything wrong with it. That's the millennials for you. They are the ones that they will say they're upset with you and they probably will not resume tomorrow. So these are some of the things you see. And it's a function of so many factors that we'll get to see here, which is the fact that the level of empowerment they have has given them a lot of impetus to do a lot of things. And of course, the Gen Z, the emerging generation, which is the latest in the pack. Now, again, this is what some of you already know this, just a bit of insight into this. Of course, this study is not done by us, it's not done by me. So just give you an insight into some generations in the modern workplace as it is now. For the first time, you have actively 4 generations in the workplace, like I said earlier. So it is likely that you might be in an organization where you are in the head office, your son is in the branch, and your daughter is in the region. All of you might find yourself sharing ideas on the subject in the office. And then, of course, how do you deal with that? These are some of the issues. People are beginning to acknowledge that it has come to stay in the workplace. Now, you see the baby boomers, like I noted, they have their strengths, their stereotypes. One of the things that I think we should also take away from here is that the issue of stereotypes. Stereotyping is is a big issue when it comes to the workplace. Everybody has a definition of how the other person should behave and behave better. And you see a lot of name calling. You believe that these millennials, they don't respect anybody. And the millennial says this generation X people, they don't understand. So the name calling and the role rehearsals, the second guessing is a big issue in the workplace. And if you don't acknowledge it, you don't trade on wisdom anymore. You have to trade on innovation. If you don't acknowledge the fact that for every generation, they bring their strengths and weaknesses to the table, your skill and your strength as a professional lies on how well you're able to understand all these dynamics, you might not be able to thrive. So you typically see the stereotypes around the baby boomers out of touch and disinterested in learning new things. Strengths characterized as being workaholics who relish long weeks and overtime. I'm sure most of us can relate with this. I remember my dad could pray for 40 minutes, sometimes even 1 hour. And of course, if you don't stay to the end of the prayer, it means you're an antichrist. This is the kind of environment we grew up. They take things easy. They are missionaries of the world. They are not in a hurry to do anything. Everything comes easy because society was organically organized to achieve a pre-designed objective. You also have the Generation X. Some of them are still in the workplace in some places. That is especially when the age still what depending on the age within the bracket, but maybe in the public service or the academics, you still see them. A lot of ideas, a lot of knowledge, but people say the stereotype around them is that they are cynical and poor team members. Again, it's also derived from their training, their attitudes, their background, which is the fact that if you're not an expert in something, don't bother. They don't believe that you can work to learn. You must learn to work. You don't understand that you have to also work to learn, which is the fact that the greatest sense of success can be achieved by failing forward within the workspace. So you also have the millennials, the millennials, the generation Y, and Gen Z. This is all self-explanatory. The greatest one I also want us to pay attention to is the one that you see, the lazy, the entitled and lazy. One of the greatest accusations against generation Y. Many people, for lack of understanding, sometimes tend to focus more on the fact that because of their work style, somebody comes to work and closes his ears and may not talk to the boss till he goes home. Sometimes they will be in the same office, even within the open office, they will send you a mail, they will not talk to you for money. So you see a lot of all of these things manifested. But we'll also get to appreciate the fact that, like I said earlier, every generation brings something to the table, and there's always a reason for all of this. And one of the things I want to say before I leave this particular slide, for most of you who are not conversant with this, the Generation X in particular, Generation Y and Z, which is the newest generation in the pack, for the African environment, I usually call them Afrillennials because they are a bit distinct from the Western pack, because Afrillennial is a product of scarcity and a product of frustration, state corruption. So most of the products of the generation have grown up seeing their parents come home, be asked to go without pension or gratuity. They are victims of corruption. So they've seen their missionary parents work so hard, for instance, and they come home and nothing to show for it. So when you tell them, even the parents are not able to encourage them to go to school, because having gone to school, there's a lot of things. This is not a topic, but just by way of mentioning this. Now, the next one I want to pick up here, because see, I'm delving deeper into the millennials because they are the diffusion, they are the early adopters, or what Roger has called diffusion of innovation. They are the ones who have the capacity to absorb new developments, new innovations, and be able to transfer it, because they have the largest noise. They are the loudest. They have access to social media. They have access to technology. They can manipulate technology. So they are the early adopters and the change accelerators. And what this means for some of us on this platform is that some of you recall one of the projects we did some years ago in the employee marketplace, which I convened. We talked about, do we then kill the millennials? Then we envisaged an era where the millennial conversation was becoming, or the millennial impact was in our face, but nobody was talking about it. For some people, it was these young people are the problem. But then it has now moved from these young people are the problem to the fact that they are the dominant population in the workplace now. They are the early adopters who have access to technology and digital devices and understand how to manipulate it. And they are the change accelerators, even for those who are driving change. If you don't understand how to deal with the millennial question, for instance, and of course, we are getting to the Gen Z. So even when you are in the leadership position, because if you are leading and nobody's following you, you're taking a walk. So if you understand how to deal with this generation, it's easier for you to understand how to lead and manage and succeed in the social workplace, as we call it. Key influence decisions, the influence decisions making processes in decision-making process are key drivers of innovation and creativity in the workplace. That's exactly what I'm saying here. So the status quo, as we have it today, has significantly changed. If you have not noticed it, it's not because it is not changing where you're, it's because we are blind to it. And I'm saying that the social organization is a social organization of mobility, co-creation, and conversation. Those who understand the strategies and the tools of engagement in driving this conversation are going to get a better output in terms of innovation and business growth. So let's go to the next slide. Now, this is one of the tools we use in EMP projects. We call it the selfie. The selfie is the tool we use to define the the millennial generation. The first one is entitled. Of course, entitlement is because of a generation that came into the world with a lot of benefits. Most of us trained our children. They are chauffeur driven from office, from home to school. They are brought back every day. They are not exposed to any form of strife. They don't even understand. They didn't see June 12. They don't even know what you're talking about sometimes. So you have some of these things. They are entitled. They are products of entitlements. They believe that they are entitled to promote it every year. They believe that they're entitled to get benefits whether they work or they do not work. This is the kind of upbringing, the kind of experiences they were exposed to. So entitlement is a critical part of the millennial generation. They also learn. Unfortunately, most people do not define their learning properly because they are seen as the mode of learning we know are the typical traditional learning where you buy your book. But because they're always on the go, learning is by exposure, learning is by experience. They interact a lot. They share. People have friends across the world. They are on social media. The followership they have is massive, much more than you can ever have in your company. So they are favorably disposed to learning information and knowledge sharing. This is the generation. They also believe in freedom. They believe in a life outside work. You know, like some of the things we also face today is that you could see the era of side hustle. They believe that employee is not a slave to the organization. Employee is just a partner. In fact, that's the word. They are partnering with you to produce. And if the production cycle does not favor them, they will leave. So you need to understand that they desire to be free. And that is, by every sense of the word, free. They will want to work part-time if possible. They want to work remotely if possible. You know, that's how it is. The next one is influence. Yes, so influence. They are influencers. I remember some years ago, for you to be an influencer, you have to be a big musician. You have to be this. You don't have nano influencers, as we call it. You know, those who a typical employee has. It's an ambassador. Employee might be an ambassador somewhere else unknown to you, or even within the organization. So they are movers and shakers in their own right. They believe they command a lot of influence, either by their peers or even some of them even brand for products. So we need to understand some of these things as part of the definition of what has become the dominant or the emerging generation in the workplace. They are very expressive. They do not have any scruples expressing themselves. They don't know what it means to be politically correct. You know, those days, your parents will say, you need to be very careful the way you say this thing. They will say it first of all before they ask you whether do you like what they said. So these are some of the dynamics you need to understand about the millennials. Just to quickly, because I know time is an issue here. So I now came up and said, what are there are 9 winning modern workplace initiatives. So what I'm saying in essence is that having listened to some of these issues, these dynamics, these challenges of trying to drive a social organization where you are creating a platform.
I'm sorry, Ndu. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't want you to rush the SMME. This is pretty very important to us, and I tell you, I'm getting really excited at what you are diving into and opening up, and I believe all the great people on this platform, distinguished professionals, captains of industry, we're all soaking it up. So if you need a little bit more time, you'll be given. But one thing is certain, we're going to grab you back, some other time, whether you like it or not. So go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. I'll try to slow down because I'm working with a stopwatch, so I'm trying to. So I will take it a bit slowly so that we can also share a lot more insight into some of these things. So again, just to give a bit of a summary to what I have said so far, I'm saying that for those who have joined late, I'm saying that there's a lot of focus in understanding that the modern workplace has changed. It has not changed because change is natural, but because there have been intrusive factors that have made it alter in significant ways that make those who are not prepared look stranded. So if you are stranded, or if you're unaware, I think it's important for you to begin to come to terms with the fact that the enterprise of tomorrow will only succeed if you are a social organization. The traditional corporate organization as we know it has expired. It did not expire because the persons who work there are not good enough, but because the tools required to move into the next phase, you must seek it out for it to happen. You must be intentional about driving that kind of change. That's basically what I'm saying. And I am also saying that the key accelerators of this change, the innovation adopters of this change, are the millennials. So organizations that do not have a strategy or are not conscious of this fact will suffer, because you cannot kill the millennials. Now, the millennials are not only there, they have also acquired skills and tools that if you are not aware of the skills and tools, you could either trivialize it or also become a victim. Why there are stereotypes that have defined each generation in the workplace, it is important that we also know the strength of each of the generations by way of building an intergenerational harmony and building a sustainable organization. You cannot disrupt the marketplace if you do not disrupt the workplace. Now, for those of you, for instance, the younger ones who also are looking for entrepreneurship, they have been preparing for the entrepreneurship journey 6 years ago. So when you ask them where do you work, they are managing somewhere. It is risky because the place is also managing you. If you do not succeed as an employee, it may be difficult for you to succeed as an entrepreneur. Now, this is not a gospel truth in this context, but you need to understand that even things like being innovative, you can be an innovative employee. And when you begin to rehearse and understand that, it also helps you succeed. I'm also critical about the fact that a larger chunk of our entrepreneurs today are largely drawn from the employee basket, because the nature of most emerging markets, especially in Nigeria, is such that most of entrepreneurs are recruited from the workplace. We don't have the culture of moving straight from the university, for instance, and it's not so common. Most times, people who do it also suffer a lot in terms of trial and error. But that's basically the way of the summary of what I have done here. I'm also saying that look, there's also a tool we use to define what we call the selfie. Selfie is quite detailed because the selfie tool brings a lot of neuroscience, psychology, and all of that. But by way of summary, the selfie is the tool we use to define the modern day employee, especially millennials and the capabilities. So now what I'm talking, having said all of this, I'm saying that there are 9 things I want you to take away from. If there's nothing you take away from here today, you need to also, I want you to take away, note these 9 winning modern workplace initiatives. You can take a screenshot. Now, the first you have here is cross-generational mentoring. Now, this cross-generational mentoring derives from the foundation I have laid earlier, which is the fact that the workplace, as we have it today, has about 4 generations working. You are likely going to have situations where a father, especially in organizations that are very tolerant of having people from the same family, you might have a situation where, I'm sure it may be happening in the public service. A father, the daughter, the wife, the son can find themselves in a regional meeting by the same organization or the same public sector, sharing ideas. And while you are there expecting that because you are wise, the language of the workplace is about innovation. It's not about wisdom. Wisdom is critical, but people say wisdom is profitable to direct. But I don't know whether wisdom has a relationship with bottom line. I'm sure at some point we're going to discuss all of that. So that's exactly why I'm saying institutions must be intentional about driving what I call cross-generational mentoring. Cross-generational mentoring will not happen by itself. It's not by happenstance. It's not by thunderclap. You must be intentional about it. You must recognize that we have the traditional mentoring system where people mentor by age and experience. But we also have the mentoring system where people mentor based on skills. So who says you cannot pair a senior person with a junior person within the organization, where the senior learns from the junior, especially if it is digital skills, to bring senior skills up to date with emerging trends, especially in digital technology, as well. You see why it is important to take cross-generational mentoring very seriously, that out there in the workplace is very bullish. There's a lot of propaganda which is saying that digital excellence is a function of age. Now, the tendency is that most people who are seemingly more experienced have fallen for this propaganda. So you are meant to understand that the older you become, you're no more fit to be effective in the workplace. So you have to depend. So when you want to get onto your laptop to start a video meeting or to start like this meeting with virtual meeting, you go and call your daughter or your son, and he does it. When he goes back, they call him again. When you go to the house, even the remote. So the game is an interesting one. So you just discover that in the organization you have disempowered yourselves. Anytime they introduce a new software, you're waiting for the software to fail so you can go to the fourth position. Isn't that funny? So these are some of the things that are very interesting in the workplace. You must be very, very conscious about it and make intentional effort to see where you can learn from each other. So organizations must begin to take mentoring seriously, not just in the traditional sense, but by way of mentoring people along the line of skills. I also have what I call the employee value proposition. Now, the employee value proposition is also one of the most important because most people on this table, if you belong to the X generation, you probably went to business school, and most of what we are taught in the business school will be focusing more on how to financial management, people management at best. You studied all the blue ocean strategy, the red ocean strategy, Pareto principle. Most leaders, as we know it today, are not sufficiently equipped in managing talents and creativity of talents. Listen to me. Most of the leaders, especially in the X and above, are not adequately prepared in managing creative talents, in managing innovation, because the business school model is about financial capital. There's no focus on talent management and creative capital. So we struggle. So what happens is that whether it is by way of remuneration, by way of understanding the skills and how to apply so the template you have, if the person does not fit into it, it means he does not know what he's doing. So you see some organizations, they say that we are focused on innovation, but we have zero tolerance for error. How can you be focused on innovation with a zero tolerance on error? Because innovation is about failing forward. So employee value proposition seeks to say you must ask yourself, what is the structure of giving a voice to the employee, such a way that they can be very active members of the value creation process within the organization. It doesn't mean sitting your power as CEO, sitting your power as a board member, but you must be intentional about defining areas and ways you can bring the strengths, the talent economy, like I said it is no more the area of manpower or workforce, the area of talents. How do I leverage on the talent of this employee to get more value for the organization? So that is where you have, like I keep on telling my friends, cooperation is not the same thing as collaboration. So people say, come and cooperate with me to do this. Because you have set an agenda, you want me to fit into the agenda. No, collaboration means it is an open agenda. You come up with an idea. And even for product creation, most of you also know that people are beginning to embrace, crowdsourcing a lot. Products are being designed from people outside who have become members of your brand tribe. You can recruit them. Ideas are coming from outside, and they're being embedded in. Now, the next one is side hustle. One of the funniest ones. A few years ago, side hustle was being spoken about in muffled tones. Now, I can tell you that 90% of employees have one side hustle or the other. In fact, those side hustles some years ago were things you do by the corner. Most of those side hustles now have been registered with the Corporate Affairs Commission. So it's no more a joke. So if you are thinking that the employee is the era of my life and soul in the organization is gone, the workplace is a place for self-discovery. It's a platform to actualize my own objective in concert with people that I work with. That's what you see in the social workplace. Nobody, like they say, you must die empty. It is difficult to see anybody who is tied to one job. So it's important that you create an atmosphere of communication that enables you to interact with the employee such a way that you even understand what their side hustle is. A complimented employee has the capacity to generate ideas from his side hustle that can feed into the organization. But again, it's a very risky area, very sensitive. I don't have the answer, but I'm just making you aware that side hustle is no more It's not something we wish away. It is there with us. Now, the virtual remote workplace, most people are working across the world. Now, some people thought that, like I said earlier, the virtual work system will just fade away. Let's see how it goes. It's not going to fade away. It's not going to fade away. In fact, it's going to get more serious because without this virtual work or virtual tools, we wouldn't have been able to do what we are doing. I think it's important to acknowledge that if you are not getting into that groove, it is important that you do that. Effective integration of remote work like virtual employees, mobile part-time and contingent employees. Most organizations, as currently structured, you need to ask yourself, do I really need to work? So when you talk to these people who have side hustles, you'll be shocked that some of them be willing to drop their pay, have a side hustle, work 3 times in a week, 4 times in a week, rather than come to work every day. You may have been trained to define work by seeing people's faces, but it is important to begin to even train people on how to work virtually. Virtual work should be trained. Now, people should take it a lot more seriously instead of living in denial. Diversity and inclusion. Now, inclusion in particular, I remember the last month we did one of our research sessions we had on where we talked about the last topic we had was on EMP project where we talked about the female millennials in the workplace. You know, the issues about inclusion, both social inclusion, digital inclusion, and you know, some of those reports came out strongly. For instance, the report says in Nigeria that most corporate executives who are female seem not to thrive so well in digital skills. There are a lot of reasons for that, and most of the reasons are very interesting. They are both historical, their family, a lot of things, you know. Some people do not get their job by being digital. So why would they meet along the way? You know, so a lot of things that go into it. But so that had consciousness, and it was a function of a poll that was administered on 80% on 1,000 professionals, female professionals. 80% of them were in the millennial group, and they were clear about the skills of women and not digital. So inclusion diversity is not the same thing as inclusion. So some people say we have extended arms to bring a lot of people into this fold, but it does not. Inclusion is being deliberate and intentional about bringing people to the table to make impact in the outcome. A strong brand community increases customer loyalty, lowers marketing costs, authenticates brand meanings. And so when you have a lot more inclusion, whether it is gender, whether it is skill, so institutions must be aware of the fact that working with people of diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds, and including them in getting decision-making process helps. Some people define a global strategy with a local government workforce. How does it work? You know, you sit back and have a strategy session and you define how you want to conquer the world. And 80% of your employees are from the same local government. Isn't that not funny? So, but these are things, so people need to begin to pay a little attention to how can you speak to, you know, the employee. Let me take you to the next one, another interesting one. Okay, before I talk about wellness programs, let me talk about employer analytics, which is a complement to what I was talking about. Employer analytics is one big area most organizations have not explored, and organizations preparing for the future must understand that employee cannot be defined by gender, certificates, and what again, your gender, your certificate, your age. You need to understand who is the employee beyond gender, certificate, and age. Who is the employee? Now, I'll give you an example. Some of you are conversant with what they call the middle sense era. Middle sense in the workplaces between age 40 to 45, 50. In the traditional workplace, when you're 40, 45, 50, you are seen as spent. But do you know what? That age is where you have the most loyal employees. Among the female folk, we call it the second adolescence. They are trying, some of them must have left the workplace at a certain stage, come back. They are coming to show you what they can do. We call it the second adolescence, but they are out to, some of them are trying to recover what they lost. organizations that are able to speak to the data they have within the organization to understand the middle sense bracket might begin to build their strategy around both the millennials and the middle sense, but they're very powerful. Some of them constitute part of the institutional memory. They know a lot of what has happened. They're experienced. They have seen it all, and they know what to do. But if you go by the traditional mantra that once you reach this age, you are spent, you may end up losing some of your best. You see, so let me also dwell a little more on it. So you need to understand certain footprints in the organization. Now tells me that Tunde's school had his primary school in this area. These are his peer group. He's a member of this old boys association. How can the old boys footprint help us in this business? Can we talk to Tunde? And I keep on giving one example. Some years ago, I worked with an organization where we are doing a project on sickle cell. For 3 years, we are struggling with it until we finally discovered that a staff who lost three of her relations to sickle cell. When we approached her to lead that project, the sickle cell project was not only successful, it became a big issue that even as a bank, we are attracting funding through that sickle cell project. If you don't understand the employee beyond gender, age, and certificates, you will not be able to understand how they can add value. You will not also be able to understand how you can add value to them. Because remember, I said that the modern workplace is a journey of shared prosperity. It is not a someone on the mount where somebody gives you direction and you obey. If the person is obeying, he's obeying looking at you and be sure that you know that he's not obeying. So that is what we are talking about. Placement and support of employees in areas of strength, career aspirations, as well as vocational strength, promotes innovativeness and partnership between staff and organization. And I can tell you, there are about 20 points I can deal with on employer analytics that if you look at those points, the insights we generate can change a lot of things. Employee marketing, most organizations are selling products to external process, which if they're able to even market to the employee, like one of the things we have done in organizations, some of us realize that we have moved away from the traditional employee system. We now call it consumer. Hello.
Please go ahead.
We call it consumerized employee. So the same way you treat the customer out there, you treat the customer out there, you treat the employee, because the employee has his phone. He's capable of doing business with your competitor, even while an employee. So you need to be deliberate about the data you have and how you can harness the energy, the skills, and the talent of the employee to drive the process of the modern workplace. Of course, wellness programs are very known to us. People will give, if not for anything, COVID has taught us some lessons. We need to begin to take wellness issues seriously and begin to embed it within the organization. It does not matter how much financial capacity you have, but there must be a strategic intent to recognize that employee wellness or workplace wellness is critical to driving innovation and business growth. Of course, employee innovation, the biggest of them all. It is innovation oftentimes is ascribed to entrepreneurs. People always glibly say, oh no, innovation is about. But the truth of the matter is that employee innovation, which has to do with a lot of openness, the way things are done, intentional collaboration, reward system, and creating an opportunity that enables people to express themselves. Especially, like I say, if the strategy of the organization is a bit bottom up, it gives people to step forward, make mistakes, and learn from it. When you have when you have an innovative employee system, you'll be shocked that you can save a lot of money, because people are going to do a lot of things because they want to do. They want to do because when they even learn, even in terms of entrepreneurship, it will also help them. So you must begin to also recognize the fact that employee innovation is one of the winning ways you need to adopt to make employees who see themselves as innovators. In fact, in some organizations, they call themselves such names as innovators. They call themselves names that will inspire a different way of thinking, because entrepreneurship empowers people to think, share, respond and act on ideas, especially if you have a recognition system. I think that is basically what it is. One of my jokes I always say is that until the traveler shares his story, the onlookers may think he's a wanderer. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is just the summary. I'll be very happy to generate a lot more interactions and perspectives. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much, Ndu. You know, and I wanted to interrupt you to say, you know, the best way I like to be addressed, for those who know me very well, it's just Tunde. I want to add another name to it, Tunde Ojo. It's music to my ears. Mr. is even too much. You know, and you know, and I'm bivocational. You know, I have pastoral responsibility, but I tell you, what I delight most is being called Tunde. I don't think, and I sometimes I wonder, why are Nigerians afraid of their names? What's wrong with bearing your name? You know, you know, but this is the only country where you have people bear different kinds of names. You
Absolutely.
know, I mean, I don't know. We're crazy about titles. Thank you very much, Ndu. Great time, fantastic session. Mute your speaker, Mr. Akindele, please. Can you mute your speaker? Thank you. I mean, on behalf of everyone on this platform and their distinguished, you know, great people, I want to say a big thank you, you know, for this session. The chat room is already abuzz. I have some questions where I'd like to go. The first person to go is Patrick. I think it's Patrick Okafor, and he's asking, does this framework apply to millennials all over the world? That is the framework you talk about, millennials. You know, what he's asking is that, I'm sure you got it. He said we have Afrilenials who are more family-centric than the regular millennials. You know, that's his contribution. Thank you very much, Patrick Okafor. He said they are hungry for, you know, they are more than the regular millennials who are hungry for autonomy. He's saying Afrilenials are more socially connected, more family-centric. You want to say a couple of things to that. Then he also said Afrilenials are malleable to feedback, are more open to mentorship, haven't been groomed in the family setting. Do you agree with that? He says, so they are all millennials, but psychographically, they are different. That is, you know, that's from Patrick Okafor. Rotimi Jayola is saying, thanks to our speaker, our guest speaker today. That's a big thank you. And, you know, I may not be able, maybe when we have the time to say thank you to them, you know, they are great minds on this platform. And that's what makes this platform every 2 weeks very exciting. We have only 47 people, but I tell you, they are distinguished, very distinguished people, you know, professionals, entrepreneurs, academics. I mean, there are professors there. I mean, it's exciting. So, Ndu, do you want to take a look at some of these comments and questions before, you know, we ask some other thing? Thank you.
Okay, I think thank you very much, Patrick. It's just, I think he's making a contribution. I think he understands. Patrick has been very active in following this project, so he understands. I think the project we've done is to separate the millennials from the millennials, because, like I said, every definition will have its own elements in terms of the background, the experiences, expectations that define them. And the African millennials is a product of instant gratification, you know, state corruption, and it has affected the way they think, the way they visit. So you see somebody in a queue, he will not stay in the queue because he's very convinced that there's scarcity. That queue, that thing they are queuing for, he may not reach him. So that has defined the way people do not believe that there's a defined destination to anything. And it has affected the way the millennials behave in this part of the world, in the workplace. You see that they do not trust the employers most times. Even though sometimes you can also blame the employer, trust is a big deficit in the workplace. So I think it's just the lot of where we find ourselves. But it is important to also know that when you create an opportunity for greater openness, greater inclusion, you are likely going to have a fair understanding, because most times success in this part of the world is defined by how much. It's not defined by sustainability. we need to begin to say, if you're building to last, it's not so much about how much you make. There must be a much more openness in the way you deal with issues about inclusion in the workplace. So thank you very much. I think that's basically what I can say about that.
Thank you. I'd like you to say a little bit more. When you say diversity is not the same as inclusion, you probably want to say a little more, and maybe a little more on saying that you're talking about the second adolescents, people between 45 and 50. That excited me, because many times in the workplace, that's about the time managers, entrepreneurs are saying your ideas are old and all of that. And then I also, before I forget, I wanted to say a little bit more on reverse mentoring. It takes a lot of humility for the older generation to know that they can learn a lot from with a lot of humility. You want to say a couple of things on that?
Absolutely.
First, diversity is not the same as inclusion.
Yeah, diversity. Oftentimes people think that the diversity, okay, they say we should bring more people to the table, let us get more views, more perspectives. But usually there's no deliberate effort to bring those views to count. So you see where people are seeking views as an afterthought, But research has shown clearly that when you create room for diverse perspectives to an issue, and if you are very honest about mining those insights, it will definitely improve the quality of policy, strategy, decision making, and all that. And then, of course, so if you have diversity and you don't have inclusion, it is still incomplete. Inclusion, it brings bringing the values and the voice to the table, such a way that it count. Diversity is just making a number, geographical balance for the sake of making the voice count. That's basically why it's important to keep that kind of clarity of definition. And the middle sense is one of my most exciting topics because I have, like I said, the middle sense is in the heat of the propaganda of you are good, we are not good. So the middle sense, like I said, is second adolescence, which is professionals trying to discover themselves, the second mission journey for professionals. But most times, organizations are not totally aware of this, and even the professionals themselves are not totally aware of it. They fall by the wayside. But the middle sense has a lot of institutional memory. The middle sense has a lot of experience, and the middle sense is no more running around. He's tried a lot of things and failed. Some of them have succeeded. And if you see him and encourage the middle sense to work, you see a new vitality. So institutions must seek to achieve a balance between the young, techie, mobile. And so it's like a game of balancing being emotionally intelligent and digitally smart. Must be intentional about being digitally smart and emotionally intelligent. So all of those factors about emotional intelligence, which is self-regulation, self-motivation, social skills, are very important because even the World Economic Forum says that the magic wand for the digital era is emotional intelligence. So leaders must be very, very aware that you need to. I'm talking about middle sense. So that's middle sense. On reverse mentoring, like you said, it's not an easy thing, which is why I said it must be a policy decision within an organization to embed it such a way that the same way you kind of match people, merge people. Is it match? Kind of match? I don't know what I call matchmaking or whatever. But there must be a way of giving room for people to be paired subtly within the organization where you know that you can mentor this person. Mentoring is already something we know, but where the reverse is where the problem is. How do you bring the younger ones into the organization to also, it goes by, there will be some reward system. Institutions must begin to also reward little ways to make people understand that nobody's waiting for salary anymore, waiting for a wristwatch or a trophy. So little things, little perks must also encourage people to share, because if people do not share, the institution will not grow. So that's basically reverse mentoring. It's not about age anymore. It's not about selling wisdom. It's about, there is an area of gap we need, because if we don't have this level of growth in digital skills as an enterprise, it will affect if we don't have the level of skills, it will affect our growth. So, and we have people who can do that, but because they are junior staff, we say, no. Until when we take these people and go and train them outside. So you need to do that audit and ask yourself, how can I bring those skills and embed them within the organization? I think that's basically what reverse mentoring is speaking to.
Thank you, Ndu. You know, Maxwell Alpan, and I know he's an HR specialist, he's saying, thank you for the nudges. I sincerely appreciate the insight you shared on employee analytics. If I may ask, how can employees undo the issue of welfare? Sorry, let me just see. I'm pulling that down. Undo the issue of welfare. Sorry, just a moment. Issues of welfare and upskill deficit in the workplace. How can employees undo the issue of welfare and upskill deficit in the marketplace? That is from Maxwell Alpan. I want to give one, I have a question for the speaker. This is from Jones. Why is it that organizations are struggling to move into the social organization construct? Will it be a case that the people who run this organization are the so-called baby boomers who are unable to adapt themselves? That's another question you want to quickly address. Thank you.
Okay, I think let me take Maxwell. Maxwell, I think he asks about how do you upskill the employees. I mean, the good thing about learning has become more distributed and more mobile now. It's no more as traditional as it is. But what I will say is that if you're an HR professional, I always advise design employee journey for the staff. And there must be an employee journey. What we still see is send them on training, send them on this. Can you define the capabilities that are the gaps and ask yourself, how can we fill them in the next 3 years, next 2 years? How can we? So my name is Andy. After profiling me and discovering the areas of gaps vis-a-vis the enterprise targets, can you use the next 2-3 months and say, these are the courses I need to take, these are the kind of people I need to relate with, these are the conferences I need to take. So we need to define the employee journey. It's not just about upskill. Upskill sounds as simple and modern as it sounds, but if you design, everybody do not have the same employee journey. When you do employee journey mapping, you can now batch employees in different groups. And those different groups is not so much about departments, it's about the areas of deficits. And when you batch them that way, you begin to now say the next 6 months, the next 1 year, when we take them through the journey, they become this. It's always cheaper than hiring every day. You can't keep on hiring every day or losing the best hands. And like I always say, at some point, it's not so much about how much you retain, it's about how much you invest in the ecosystem. Because even when they leave, the ecosystem, if it is rich enough, it will add value to the whole process. You don't have total control over that. Jones, I think he answered the question himself. I also talked about the fact that the leadership construct we have in most organizations currently is basically, like he said, the baby boomers and the Generation X, whose best effort at the business school is about managing financial capital. It's not so much about managing talents and creativity. So most of us are learning on the job. They learn to work. They didn't work to learn. So you are struggling to understand. You can't tell somebody who has gone to an Ivy League university that he doesn't understand what he's saying. Rather than that, he doesn't know what he's saying. So it's one of the challenges of the of change. We are all beneficiaries and victims, depending on which side you find yourself. But we need to be very much aware of it.
Thank you. I like your expression that when the new software is out, I'm sure a lot of people in the baby boomers, a lot of baby boomers, there's a new trend. They will just say, I wish this thing would fail so that we can get back to brick and mortar. I'd like to ask, you said digital excellence is a function of age, is a propaganda in the marketplace. You want to say a little bit more on that, and then can you use your crystal ball? What is the future of work? Is it virtual? Is it in person or on site? Or is it a hybrid? Or none of the above? Thank you.
I wish I have the answer. I can only attempt. Now, I don't have the answer, but I can attempt. I'm sure you know the most softwares, even in organizations, you check. Most organizations, when they acquire new softwares, when the people who acquire them resign, the team will resign with them. They retire. That's what I call it. They retire the software. It's a very big problem because most times institutions invest in the software ahead of the employee. So, like I said about the employee journey, If you are intentional about the kind of skills you want to embed within the organization, you put the employees up for that skill. It's not just about buying technology. So you buy softwares, install them. There is no keep on struggling with them. When the person gets tired, when it is time to renew, even the person who acquired will forget to apply for renewal. Because, so it is just that gap. It's also part of the journey itself. But it is important to know that a lot of money is being lost by backing on software acquisitions that are not allowed, they're not being put to use. 70% of what is acquired usually are not put to use in most organizations. It's about trend. Trend is that if you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have that, you're not serious. So you keep on acquiring them. At some point, the person who acquired them resigns, he leaves, and then lives with him, and then it becomes, such things. So I'm just saying that, people should be very, very, what am I talking about? People should be very, very aware that, sorry, how do I put it? I think I mixed it up. What was the question again?
Yeah. We're talking about.
Come in.
We're talking about awareness. Yeah. We're talking about how particularly the baby boomers are looking at opportunities. If a new software is out, a new technique they wish it would fail so that they could go back to brick and mortar.
Yeah, that's what it is. There was the next question. What was the next question?
Yeah, the future of work. Is it
well, the future of work, I mean, like you said, what I know from the little experience I've got is that the future of work is about human beings driving innovation. There's no other way. Robots will do their thing, but they will also be robots. So human beings must acquire the necessary skills to be able to drive change, whether it's from the point of view of relational authority or from positional leadership. We must know that it's human beings that drive. So it's a hybrid. Technology has come to stay, and we need to acquire as much skill as we can. But human beings will dictate the future of work, because if human beings fail, all the technological investments will also fail. So the more we equip ourselves with the required knowledge, the more we're able to drive the kind of change we expect to happen.
Thank you very much, Ndu. The last one for me is that I know baby boomers that are a whole lot of them running businesses. They are finding difficult dealing with millennials. All right, and you are saying that they are, they find it easy to adapt to information they read and all of that. But my little understanding, and I think I asked the question at one of our sessions, that they are known to be anti-intellectual. And this is documented. The millennials are intellectual, and to be intellectual is to know exactly the things that have gone in the past that are fundamental enough to affect the present. All they care about is technology and how to use it. As good as that is, I'm sorry. One of my own statement is that I don't believe in the new school alone. I believe in the old school and the new school, so that we can get the real school. So if millennials are intellectual, they don't care about what the Greeks have done in terms of thinking. They don't care about what the Romans have done. They don't care about the civilizations that have gone ahead. They're just interested in using their phone. They don't care about. Will you say they care about fundamentals? I mean, what you have done today is an integration of theory and practice. Isn't that the future? Thank you.
Yeah, I think you are right and wrong. You see, who has defined success by way of who has defined intellectual? It's you that has defined intellectual. The millennials are running unicorns. They are running companies that, I mean, that many years ago you talk about building companies for the company life cycle after 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
So you see companies that have been born in 5 years, they have changed the world. The word intellectual is a function of your understanding of your own era, your definition of what success is all about. Those things are going to change, unfortunately. But again, let's not take it away the fact that they're not learning organically doesn't mean that they're not learning. They're learning in different forms, may not be the same way we expect it. Some things will give way, like in every, this is the fourth industrial, there was one, there was two, there was three. Things will change. But you also know that knowledge has become more accessible than ever before, than we ever had it before. You can imagine before doing a thesis, how you do a thesis and how you can use Google Scholar. You know, so I don't think it's so much about the worry you have is a bit exaggerated in the sense that what is the value of knowledge? Is it not the outcome it designs or the excitement it generates? The excitement may be lost, but the outcome, and of course, at some point, we're going to come to a point of disruption where you know, the cycle of development, disruption will come, where we now ask ourselves, this thing, did it work or did it not work? We go back to where I come from, we go to another level. So I don't think you should bother so much to the extent that the level of innovation that has taken place in the last couple of years was never anticipated or conceived by any living thing. The ease with which you can do this now was never, it was not an intellectual discussion from years ago. Things are not being documented as much as they should be, but they are, but not as organized. There are still lakes, maybe not warehouses. But I don't think it's as bad as you make it look sometimes. They are not anti-intellectual. They are pro-innovation. Maybe anti-intellectual, but they are pro-innovation. They are very innovative. So I don't think.
Thank you very much, Ndu. I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm going to ask you one more question, and we close. I don't know whether there's anybody. I want to say a big thank you for those who have joined us here. If I start to call on names, academics, professionals, entrepreneurs, my dear brother Nico Boulier, I mean, all the great guys right here. You know, it's been a long time. I mean, if we will not live here, you know, the medical doctors, distinguished, you know, experts across industries. I want to say a big thank you for, you know, joining this conversation. I think we can end on the note that you cannot disrupt the marketplace. You cannot, if you cannot disrupt the workplace, according to Ndu, it's going to be very difficult for you to, because the greatest resource that is in this world is still the human being. Now, let me ask two questions in one. What has prepared you for this kind of learning? You know, because you are not an HR specialist, you are a marketing communication specialist. And I know you also do tremendous research. When I was introducing, I said you made a contribution of 100 articles, and you even make inputs to, you know, Harvard Business Review research effort. What is it that has prepared you, you know, for this? And then going forward, what do you think are the critical skills for the future, for, you know, young professionals? What are the critical skills for the future?
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much for that question, because I think it's a very important one for me. Again, like I said, I'm not an HR professional, and I don't even intend to be one. The interesting thing is that there's a lot of disruption that has taken place. Part of what we have done in Employee Marketplace Initiative, which I convene, is a couple of questions we raise have come to show that tools required to make fundamental changes in the workplace and not necessarily HR skills. The languages might sound HR, I mean, with due respect to the professionals here. The tools of transfer, hiring, redeployment. So HR communication, for instance, is compelled communication. It's not employee engagement, it's employee management. So employee does things because, you know, there's something, but the tools you require to influence change and design outcomes are things like social media tools, skills of mobilizing employees, how to understand that, you know, there's a shared journey, is there something you need for them. There's a lot of mistrust within the organization. So the projects we do, you know, sits at the intersection of human resource, managerial psychology, marketing communication, and of course, neuromarketing. We try to harness the knowledge and skills in those areas to interpret the challenge of the modern day employee and the future of work. As we see it, again, it is a perspective, it's not a gospel truth. And then the next question you asked me was about what? You asked me about what is my thought of the skills required to The skill. Did you say the skills?
Yes, the skills of today and the future.
Well, the skills of today and the future will also be determined partly by the market, the opportunities of the today and the future. And we see largely that the opportunities have been revolved around the digital enabling skills. How do you automate? How do you design? How do you automate? How do you design? And how do you digitize? So if you cannot automate, you cannot design, you cannot digitize, then you're shortchanging yourself. So all of those skills are what you require. But more fundamentally, like I said, the journey to the future is largely a function of the emotional intelligence quotient you have, because human beings are still the drivers of change. But in terms of the technology skills, you need to understand that people will continue to respond to the opportunities of the age, which we have seen clearly to be on how you can drive change along innovation, digitization, automation. My own perspective is not a gospel truth, like I always say.
Thank you very much, Ndu. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my colleagues, Touchstone, that make this happen. It used to be every week, and now is once in 2 weeks. Muiwa Labi, Dipo Gundipe, and the rest. It's been quite an exciting journey. And the last but not the least, before I sign up, and is to, please, I want to say a big thank you to my wife, whose birthday is today, and let me say thank you to her for encouraging me to have this instead of going out, with her and having a good time, have an opportunity to share. Today is her birthday, and I think she's on the platform. Only I say thank you to you, for being there, and I wish you the very best that, God can give for this birthday. Once again, thank you very much. Nduneche Ezurike, thanks for the opportunity to learn such a pragmatic and data-backed session. Thank you very, 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 very much for this comment. Touchstone to everyone. This has been very enlightening. Just a few days ago, a friend, HR expert, sharing how some of the Generation Z are beginning to identify as alternative gender roles, like transgender. Many HR experts are dealing with a lot of these days. So many things are going to be happening. Thank you till we come your way again. It's 3 o'clock, and it's going to be in the next 2 weeks when we're going to bring another distinguished speaker to come and share knowledge and enlarge our minds on the critical issues for business sustainability, professional growth, and flourishing. Once again, Ndu, thank you very much. We are certainly going to harass you and bring you back, because it has been a very, very good day. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Touchstone Business Sustainability series, enjoy the rest of your weekend. God bless you. Thank you.
Happy birthday to you.
That's a good one.
I'm most grateful.
Oh my God.
Happy birthday to you. Thank you. God bless you all.
God bless you. I'm very pretty. Wow.
Thank you very much.
May the good Lord bless you.
Thank you.
Amen.
May the good Lord bless you, SNR.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
We
everyone.
love you from Canada.
Thank you. Joining us from Canada.
Okay, thank you.
We love you, ma.
Thank you, my dear sister.
Ndu, this is what we call the after party. It happens for just about 5 minutes or so, in which you just say hi.
Happy birthday, Dada. God bless you.
God bless you, sister.
Thank you, Professor
God
Lam.
bless you.
Appreciate you.
I know your voice any day.
Great. Thank you,
Enjoy
Gregory.
yourself.
Thank you,
Thank
Nick.
you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Henrietta.
God bless you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you, Elda Yokule Fagemi. God bless you.
Shotade, thank you.
Thank you, Shotade.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
My two hands up.
Lawrence,
What means
Dr.
looking for your
Lawrence.
call?
Thank you. I was in a meeting in church.
Happy birthday.
Olugbenga Owutuomo.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Hey, Brashagu,
Akim
thank
Edward
you.
Adetuoro.